neutral players and also watchers, I guess, because I might send this video out and about. So what I'm going to talk to you today is about a D10 system based on the nWoD 2009 system that I use as my go-to for pretty much any modern setting. One of the things I love about it is that I can explain it to you very, very quickly, and that's what I'm going to attempt to do now. Okay, so in the D10 system that I use, the D10 variant, you have a character sheet, which I'll be popping up to the side of me now. And also on that character sheet, you have your usual things that you recognize from D&D. So you'll have your attributes, which are strength, dex, stamina instead of constitution, and some that you may not have heard before, things like resolve, composure, wits, manipulation, but those can all be explained in game. But you have these attributes that you have, much like you have in D&D. You also have skills, which go down the left-hand side of the character sheet. The skills aren't calculated from your attributes as they are with D&D. They're things that you add and level up with using XP, very similarly. So instead of just leveling up and gaining proficiency in something, you add dots. So your attributes go between 1, they don't go below 1, and 5. Your skills start at 0, as in you know nothing about it, to 5. Okay. There's things called specialities as well, but you don't need to know that for one shot, so we're leaving that out for now. So you've got dots going up to 5 in an attribute and 5 for a skill. When you need to do a check, I will normally give a suitable attribute and suitable skill. If you know about the skills and attributes yourself, you can maybe propose one if you think your character would do it a different way. You add up the dots and you roll that many d10s. Okay, so when you roll those d10s, you add up the pool that you have. You may be given bonuses, so there may be an environment or a tool that's on your person, something in your inventory that will give you extra help. So I might say, oh, take an extra 2 dice for that. However, then the evil DM turns around to you and says, now to add the difficulty. The difficulty is a value that I assign to the challenge based on the environment, the maybe lack of tools, other things like that, and I take dice away. So you have a certain pool of dice, you take a certain amount away, and you roll whatever is left. Okay, so when you roll those dice, you're looking on a d10 to get an 8, 9, or 10. If you just get 1, 8, 9, or 10 from that roll, you've succeeded in some way. A failure is only if you get 0, 8s, 9s, or 10s. Now, obviously, the more successes that you get, the better you've succeeded, and more you can have more of an effect. Some of which you can say, oh, if because I had extra successes, can I have this? Can I have that? Can it be that instead of just knocking the door in, I've knocked the door off its hinges, for example? Those kind of things, rule of cool. Or I may offer something that will have a little bit more value with regard to the story because I know what will be useful. So on top of that, 10s are very special. They do a thing that we call explode. So for every 10 that you roll, you pick up an extra dice and you roll that and you add that to your pool. If you roll a 10 into a 10 into a 10 into a 10, you just keep picking up more dice and rolling them and adding them to the pool, adding to the potential success. So even on a single dice, you can roll 10, 10, 10 and get 3 successes, for example. That's pretty much it for checks. Get an 8, 9, or 10 on a pool that's calculated in that way. Very simple calculation. Combat. Let's just go straight to combat. Combat is a check. So you have a melee skill, a firearm skill, an athletic skill if you're throwing things at people, and a weaponry skill. When you're using those skills, you would normally partner them up with strength or dex, depending. And then when you're trying to hit your target, if you're trying to hit them at melee range, the target will have a defense value. Defense value is normally the lower of your wits or your dex. So, if you don't have dex, so you can't move fast enough, you can't dodge out the way. If you don't have wits, you can't see it coming and react quick enough. So it's usually the lesser of those two. There can be exceptions. And that is the diff. Nice and simple. So you would add up the, say, strength and weaponry, minus the defense value, roll. Every 8, 9, or 10 is a point of damage done to them. And I'll talk about damage in a sec. Once again, You roll tens, you just keep rolling and rolling and rolling, adding to the successes and therefore adding to the damage. Okay, so damage. Now that you know about combat. Oh, I forgot. Ranged combat. So ranged combat, you do not use the defense of the target because dodging a bullet or dodging an arrow is really difficult, and more often than not isn't the rate limiting step for that check. So what you're looking at there is range and other things like for arrows it'll be kind of crosswind or visibility or cover. I will normally assign that to you. So I'll say, yeah, they've ducked behind cover, and I will normally raise the difficulty. One of the upsides to that, though, is if you're using ranged, unless you're using an arrow or throwing a rock or something like that, you're usually using a gun. A gun will normally take somebody out in a couple of shots. This is the gritty reality of this system, which I love. You avoid fighting as any normal person would, because to fight is to be damaged, right? You know, no shame in running away, especially if you're up against a vampire. So, damage. There are 3 damage types. You've got bashing, which is represented by a slash in one of your health boxes. Talk about those in a sec. Bashing damage is the usual kind of cuts, grazes, things like that. Things that aren't life-threatening, but are going to wear you down. As I say, it's represented by a diagonal line in one of your boxes, and it takes 15 minutes to recover from the effects of that. Now, you still might have visible bruising or something like that, but you've kind of got accustomed to it, and you can work through it, and you know you're okay. You know, you're no longer feeling the effect of that black eye or that not broken nose, but busted nose, or whatever. So 15 minutes recovery per point. So if you have 4 points of bashing damage, you know it's going to take a whole hour until you don't feel bruised anymore. It's still a little aches and things, but you're getting over it. Then you've got lethal. Lethal are cuts and massive force trauma and things like that that could potentially kill you. Now, when you get dealt lethal damage, so a gun will only do lethal damage, a sword will only do lethal damage, whereas your fists or basic bludgeoning weapons will do bashing damage, the aforementioned damage. You'll be doing lethal damage instead. Now, lethal damage is represented by a cross. It's done that way so that the diagonal line can turn into a cross. So you can upgrade the damage as you're recording it on your sheet. Now, this damage takes 2 days per point to recover from. So you're going to, if you want to carry on using your character the next day, there's no long rest and you're back to normal. None of the cartoon aspects of D&D 5th edition. You have that much damage, you're waiting days for that stuff to go, or you're adventuring whilst very, very damaged and prone to being dead. World of Darkness, very much like Cthulhu, you're going to be at some point running away or going dead. Then finally you've got aggravated damage, my favorite. So aggravated damage is damage caused by certain supernatural effects, spells, fire. Fire does aggravated damage to a lot of people. And it is, well, as it says on the tin, it's aggravated damage. It's damage that has automatically damaged your body. It can be up to and including parts being lopped off. But I have a system that manages that, which manages that better than World of Darkness. If you take aggravated damage, it is so grievous, this damage, that it takes weeks to get rid of a point. A single point of aggravated damage will take you out for weeks. Yeah, up to 2 weeks per dot. Now, medical care and things like that can reduce the recovery time and allow you to heal up faster. But, well, put it this way. You're a criminal. You got into a gang fight. You going off to your nearby ER that will get you up and running in days? Or do you have to go to a backstreet doctor who will maybe be able to shave off a couple of days? Anyway, so yes, you take damage. You have a number of health slots. Those health slots are equal to 5 plus your stamina, well, I was about to say stamina mod, your stamina score, the number of dots you have in stamina. So the average person has about 2 or 3 in stamina. 1 is really, really poor. So the average person has about 6 or 7 health slots. Once you fill up those health slots with bashing damage, if there's no more space, well, first of all, you full up in bashing damage, which means that you're a little bit woozy. Every turn you're going to be rolling to see whether or not you're going to be dazed or pass out or whatever. But also, any bashing damage that you take on top of that turns into lethal. And what happens is, from left to right, you start turning those diagonal lines into crosses instead. Okay, and they start to become lethal damage. Once you fill up with lethal damage, you're in big trouble. You're close to getting into some really nasty states, up to including comas. So you have to be careful once you've filled up your damage with that. But even more so, once you've filled up on lethal, you start to bleed out. You've taken so much loss that your body can't sustain itself anymore. So you need to get that one point at the end turned back into bashing damage to stabilize. If you don't, you're going to start taking aggravated damage. Now, you can take aggravated damage on its own, so you can have 2 points of aggravated damage and the rest of your health bars clear. That's fine. It means you're really, really scarred up somewhere on your body, but you're not dying. If you're full on lethal damage and you start bleeding out, those lethal damages start being turned into asterisks. So it goes diagonal line, cross, and then asterisk. And those X's start turning into asterisks. When your health bars are full of aggravated damage, you are dead. You bled out. No death saving throws or anything like that. Your death saving throws was you watching that aggravated damage turn up. And that's where you're visibly bleeding on the floor and your friends have got to come up and do a first aid check to stabilize you, stop you bleeding out. But even then, you don't get up. You don't go to one hit point and go, oh, I can fight again. You're on the floor, you've got a bunch of debilitating effects going off, and you just hope that your friends succeed, because if not, chances are you're not going to make it. So that's it. That's combat. Nice and simple. It doesn't seem simple with the recording health. That's the only part that doesn't seem simple, but it is literally get your attribute, get your skill, take off the limits due to range or to defense, roll those dice, look on your d10s for 8s, 9s, or 10s, apply that as damage. That damage will start taking people out. Initiative is very, very good in this. So initiative is the last part of damage in combat, and that is that you roll a single d10 and you add your initiative modifier. Your initiative modifier in this case is your wits plus your dexterity. So you add those two together and you use it just as a modifier, as you would with a modifier on a d20 in D&D, and it's whatever you roll on a d10 plus that modifier. That's your initiative score. There we go. That's everything with regard to that. I'll cover two more things because I'm just doing this really quickly. So you've got a thing called willpower. Okay, willpower gives you a number of different things in a game. In this game. So your willpower is the total of your resolve, which is your ability to commit to things, and your composure, which is your ability to keep a straight face, lie in some cases, or at least hide your feelings. But also it's the type of thing that keeps you looking cool, even though you might be screaming inside. So your resolve and your composure together is your total willpower effect. Now that pool is one of two things. So your willpower value is a pool of dice. So I could say roll your willpower, and you do that by rolling d10s as you would with a check. But you also get a number of points, sometimes represented. I sometimes give people beads equal to that value. Now, if they have, if you have some beads, or if you have some points that you can spend them in one of three ways. So you can, before rolling a check, add 3 to a roll by spending one of those points, or after a check you can re-roll that check. You don't like the result, or you got no successes, you can pick up the dice, blow a willpower, and roll the whole thing again. Or if you're being attacked and you're being attacked on your defense, you can blow a willpower point to add 2 to your defense, which means they lose 2 dice to that roll. Now, here's the downside. Very hard to get your willpower back. Sleeping gets you back a point. Sometimes if you're having a longer rest, I will just say refill all of your points. There's also a thing that normally you'll choose one of the 7 deadly sins or the 7 saintly virtues as part of creating your character. If you exemplify that virtue or that vice, you may gain 1 back for your vice, because they're usually very easy to do. Or if you exemplified your virtue and you can't pitch for this, I'll tell you that you get them all back. Okay, so you get a moment of just epiphany, and suddenly you're ready to go again. The The thing with those three options, you can only do one of them. So if you added +3 to your roll, you can't re-roll. If you didn't, you can re-roll. So however which way you want to do it. That is that for pretty much everything to do with dice. Everything you need for a one-shot, it's certainly. There is an extra dynamic that I'll talk to you for interest's sake, and that is you normally have a morality score. Morality score typically starts at 7. It goes from 1, which is completely depraved, out of your mind. You're completely detached from the social contract, and you don't find anything distasteful anymore. You can kill people. You can kill an entire bus of people. You really don't care anymore. 10 is you have a crippling conscience. You cannot lie. You feel terrible about anything that you do, which is underhand and dishonest. Okay, you start at 7, which means that you can lie for self-preservation. You can defend yourself without feeling crippling guilt. There are various things that you can do. I'm not going to give you an exhaustive list. There is an exhaustive list, but you don't need to hear it. Basically, you start acting illegal, immoral. I will start lowering your morality score, and as your morality score goes down, you're subject to the possibility of derangements. Okay, insanities, derangements are part of this. I can give them out for other reasons, but being immoral is one of them. You can get them through that way, but that's just for interest's sake, that you have a score of morality for your character. Okay, that is pretty much it. There's extra stuff I could tell you, like, for example, guns and weapons and things like that have a weapon value, which means the first success you do with that weapon actually does multiple damage instead of just one. Your fists will only ever do 1 point of damage, okay, to start with, and then extra for each of your successes. That is something that could happen in game. For most of the one-shots that I'm thinking of, I doubt you'll actually get into combat, and I guess that's probably a challenge for some people. But yeah, I am mostly doing investigation work, so I might prove myself wrong. I might write a few where suddenly you might end up with a bit of a dust-up, or you might be needing a gun. I certainly did a fantastic, well, it was fantastic because of the players. I'm not bigging myself up. A fantastic Hound of Tindalos one shot where there was a lot of combat. But again, that was fast, free flowing. I love it. So yeah, that's it. That's World of Darkness. By audio, it probably isn't telling you much, but I'm going to be adding graphics to this, so it should make sense. If it doesn't make sense, please feedback and I'll tell you a bit more. But mostly, it's if you can count to 10 and then back down again and roll some d10s and watch out for 8s, 9s, and 10s, you can pretty much play this game and you're ready to go. Other than that, you can write the character however you want. I'll probably recommend, oh, you probably want a score of this or you want a score of that. But yeah, for the most part, not a big deal. You can choose whatever you want. Okay. So the first one is going to be a ghost story, Paranormal Investigators, and I will do the blurb for that in a separate video because I probably want to keep this for other one shots. So that's it for now. There's other bits I could tell you, like there is an advantage and disadvantage system, pretty much the same as D&D, where you roll twice, get the better result, or roll twice, get the worse result. Means rolling your pool twice and remembering how many successes. But yeah, that's it. So hopefully we'll be using this for modern settings, whereas more cartoony and fantasy settings, I'll rely on D&D. The extra setting that I will be doing is Elite Dangerous RPG, and I can actually switch to, was it my EDRPG main screen here? Let me just, there we go. So that's what it looks like at the moment, and so yeah, lots of one-shots to come.